Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. You guys already know that the TTRPG community attracts some of the weirdest weirdos in a very large community of weirdos. Some of them are harmless, others like to wear matching fuzzy ears and tails and should be kept at the farthest distance possible, and by the very nature of TTRPGs, there's a pretty big power imbalance between players and the DM. And what do you get when you combine a noticeable power gap in a large community of potential degenerates? That's right, whether it's Hollywood or your mom's basement, the one constant in scenarios like this one is the surplus of creeps who try to make it their personal mission to try and dive into the pairs of pants whose owners would be the most revolted at the thought of even giving said creep a friendly handshake. But dear listener, when the stars align and God is looking the other way, both the flirter and the flirtee will be equally insufferable. The story I have for you today stars a player who just wanted to play some good old D&D, but falls victim to two chicks who were having a contest to see who can get everyone to throw up first. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Enjoy. This week's story comes from Reddit user Squawkatalk and is titled DM Wants to Bang a Player, Who Is Also a Problem. To preface this, I am also a woman who prefers women. This was my first woman DM, and out of the 4 years I've been playing D&D, I've only ever had male DMs. Every one of them has had weird sexual hangups, and the games I DM'd had a that guy who made my life miserable. That's another story and not why I'm mad right now. So when I found a lady DM, I thought for sure my problems were over. I was so wrong. Alice is a great DM for the most part, and no, this isn't her real name. She's fair with loot, she's engaging, her characters are compelling, and her plot hooks are great. She's got a great sense of humor and is quick-witted. She just desperately wants in this girl's pants. We were playing D&D 5e to start with. When the campaign began, none of us realized that she had a crush on Mary, also not her real name. We had known each other for a few months before from a Discord group we were all in and wanted to make a D&D campaign. Alice volunteered to DM and we agreed. We grabbed a few more people and off we went. It took a few sessions for me to realize that things were a bit skewed in Mary's favor. She had the best NPC responses, the most interesting encounters, the rich noble character was finding the most gold, and at this point we hadn't come across any merchants, and we weren't getting any items either. I'd seen favoritism before, and honestly, it didn't bother me. I can work around not having any loot. As long as my character has money for rations, and she can sleep in a stable, it was fine. Then I got a message from the DM saying, "Hey, Mary's gonna split from the party." It was like session 4 at this point, and we had just had a session the day before. I said cool, and found out from another player that they were going to be having private sessions every night for like 2 weeks, skipping our regular game night until this was resolved. So I asked to listen in on this. They were cool with it. It was... wow. Mary's character was hit on by nearly every male NPC and a few lady NPCs. There was action, romance, a forced marriage, yes, forced by magic, and suddenly the PC had found a man who would never ever desert her, loved her for all she was, a passionate man who yielded to her desires, etc., etc. I have to admit, I was very excited for my character's arc. I never had a DM pay this much attention to me before, and I was excited at the prospect of having my character thought of so much. Nope. I asked who was going to get solo sessions next, and Alice said, "Oh, I won't be doing this with everyone else. It would be, weird." I was confused, so I asked what she meant by weird. She confessed that they were role-playing the smut parts when their verbal sessions were over, and she didn't want to do that with anyone else. It was then that it dawned on me that Alice had a thing for Mary. I'll admit, I was pretty upset. I felt slighted, but after a talk with my partner, I realized that, in the end, it's just a game, and if both parties are willing, it was fine. As long as things didn't start getting unfair. Things started getting unfair. The sessions became the two of them speaking to each other about 80% of the time. The paladin actually tunes out of the game unless he's being spoken to directly. The barbarian left the game because she wasn't getting to speak ever, and myself and the warlock mostly just interjected when we could. The warlock went to the city she was from, and she also didn't get a solo session, and eventually just had to ask questions out loud whenever anyone asked her a question. Like, I don't know, Alice, do I know that? So far, Mary has had a 2-week solo session complete with an all-new cast of characters the DM admits the rest of us will never meet, a month-long solo session for her second character complete with fleshed-out politics, a full cast of NPCs that we only met like 3 of. Her first character is the only one who can get us out of certain situations. Her second character just so happened to study the exact thing we were looking for in a world where no one else knows anything about it, not even the characters, and she's like 17, so she's really smart. Pages upon pages of information. She complained once that the DM gave her 14 pages of backstory about the city we were in. When we went to the city I was from, I got half sentences as we went along and no solo sessions. Only she has the solutions for very specific puzzles that Alice crafts that need a spell that only Mary has. You might be thinking, okay, so what has Mary done? Well, we were in a city full of creatures that none of us knew about, not even the paladin who was from this area, but he was the only one who could speak Infernal, so he was our translator. Alice still posited every question to Mary. What's Mary doing? What's she feeling? What's her reaction? And finally, Mary said, I'm tired of being the one who has to do everything. Alice said, fair enough, and had the paladin deal with things. After about 15 minutes of them going back and forth, Mary finally pipes up. Well, I'm just gonna go to bed if I'm not doing anything, and leaves the call. It was about 6 p.m., not bedtime at all. Alice says that she'll see what's up and leave the call. We wait, and 10 minutes later, Alice pops back in. Yeah, she's tired, and if she's not doing anything, she feels like she's wasting time. She's gonna cool off and then come back. We were like, okay. After that, anytime Mary wasn't in the spotlight, she'd leave the call, saying that she was wasting time. Call me when it's my turn. The rest of us were pretty darn patient when it came to her and Alice, so this infuriates me. It's an ongoing thing. Anytime Alice tries to deviate from her, she throws a tantrum for wasting her time, and Alice has to go and get her. This isn't even mentioning the weird comments they make towards one another during the game. Alice has tried to get Mary to be her little DDLG dynamic, and Mary is not interested in that. She's got a boyfriend. Her boyfriend doesn't mind the smut, but the dynamic is a no. And I know this because our characters were talking at the breakfast table, and Alice all of a sudden started talking about it out of nowhere. Mary said, can we talk about this afterwards? Our characters were talking. Alice said, oh, right. And they went back to the two of them RPing. I've put up with DMs showing favoritism before, but this has been the longest campaign I've ever been in. I had no idea that it got worse. Wait, hold up. Mary's got a boyfriend? Yeah, there's the whole implication that Alice is trying to get Mary to cheat on the guy, but I'm more shocked that she managed to hang on to a man in the first place. So normally I use my little interruptions to provide sound advice for the OP and my viewers in order for them to improve their D&D games while pretending I'm funny. But for this story, my only advice is to get the f*** out. You already got a DM who's turning the game into daddy dom little girl smut and a massive egomaniac who won't even let you engage with the smut even if you wanted to. What if I wanted to be someone's little girl? You ever think about that one, Alice? This whole situation is an incredibly confusing and incredibly irritating bomb, and dude, that fuse has been lit. Can't tell you how long until the spark hits the primer and causes a detonation, but dear God, what a detonation it will be. The blast could come in a variety of forms. Alice pulls a Lizzo and gets frustrated that she can't get away with sexually harassing one of her underlings. Mary gets fed up with constantly being hit on, or more likely gets fed up with not being the center of attention 24/7. Or Mary's boyfriend finds out what's been going on and opens a whole new can of worms. bombs. Regardless of how or when that drama bomb explodes, it's gonna explode. And the best thing anyone can do in a situation like this is get the hell out before it does. Hey Alice, I'm gonna have to drop out of the game. My goldfish has got salmonella and he's gonna have to move to Canada so the specialized doctors can treat his disease. I don't know, man, make some shit up. But considering how there's a part 2, I'm afraid that my advice has come too late, and poor OP got caught up in the blast zone. Well, at least we get to watch something blow up. Okay, so now that things have cooled down a bit, here's an update to my previous post. So one thing I failed to mention during my last story is that we are all in the same area roundabout. So we're mostly doing Discord calls because of the virus of unknown origins. Mary did not feel comfortable with us knowing where she lived quite yet, since she lives with her younger siblings and parents. We met at Alice's place usually, or my place. This is important. To pick up where I left off, Mary had started getting really testy during Discord calls and giving us whiplash. I asked the Warlock if they noticed the same thing, and they did. I wasn't completely nuts. I confided in them that I felt a little upset that Mary was getting so much attention, and Alice was neglecting the rest of us a bit. They agreed, and we ended the conversation with some inane chatter about unrelated things. The very next day was a session, and everything seemed mostly fine. Mary was in a good mood, and Alice wasn't being overly flirty with her, and we were continuing our mission. We begin, and the first thing out of Alice's mouth is, "Since someone seems to think that I talk to Mary too much, how about we talk to Paladin?" So they f***ing snitched. Things got a little more tense after that. My characters were coming up empty on rolls from 18s to nat 20s, where, as usual, Mary was gleaning a ton of information at 11s and 12s. After posting this story and speaking to my partner, I decided that I should leave the campaign. Now, contrary to what I've said before, my character was actually pretty intertwined in the story, and I wanted a clean break for everyone else. So I made a plan to speak with Alice about things, to tell her why I was leaving, and to work things out without killing my character, since killing my character would essentially kill the mission with the way she made player deaths work. Before I could talk to Alice, I got a long, and I mean a very long text message from Mary, essentially saying that she was tired of the way that Alice had not only been treating her, but her friends too, and she was cutting her out of her life entirely. She wanted to stay friends with the rest of the D&D group, but she was leaving the campaign because Alice had begun making her incredibly uncomfortable, and nothing she did was shaking her off her trail. She noted that Alice was focusing on her in a major way, and she had tried to point it out to Alice that she wasn't being fair. When that didn't work, she started being bratty during games to show Alice that she wasn't all that great. I was like, alright. I told her that I did want to stay friends and found out some extra shit that Alice was doing. Long story short, she was being racist, transphobic, she was spamming Mary with messages constantly while she was sleeping, and kept telling Mary that she was going to find her house and come kidnap her. Kidnap her younger siblings so she'd have to see her. She was going to schmooze her parents into inviting her over to dinner, a bunch of weird shit. Anytime Mary wanted to hang out with someone else, Alice would get jealous and make Mary feel bad for leading her on and being a tease and not giving her a chance. Mary never said anything about this because she didn't want to rock the boat and break up the D&D game. That was a running theme with the group, actually. Turns out, none of us actually liked Alice. We were all just under the impression that each of us was a package deal, and if we cut Alice out of our lives, then the rest of the group would also get cut out. So, all of us stayed quiet and silently put up with everything she was doing. Despite everything, we were mostly enjoying the game, but for Mary, the breaking point had arrived. So happily, we all cut Alice out of our lives. Things were fine, at least for a few days. First, we started getting phone calls. The Warlock was the only one ever to answer, and she was given this sob story about how Alice was just in love. How she loved deeply, passionately. Alice made her promise that no matter what happened, she wouldn't block her and would stay friends with her. The Warlock promised, hung up, and then blocked her number. I also received a call, but didn't answer. I've been through weird shit enough. I don't need more manipulative people in my life. The paladin and barbarian, who remember was no longer in the campaign, also got phone calls, but they didn't answer either and blocked her number too. I don't know what possessed her to do this, but she ended up driving to my house and banging on my door. I live in an apartment complex, so she got an angry neighbor cussing her out while she yelled at my door, finally leaving when he told her off. I sent out a message to our group chat that she came to my house, and Mary said that she was going to go stay with someone for a week. No one else got a visit knowingly from Alice. I've started my own campaign, and so far the rest of the group seems to be having fun. It has been a couple of weeks, and nobody has heard from Alice. I sincerely hope that we never do. I don't know if I can trust anyone to DM for me again. I've got another game I'm in, and the DM is really good, but I feel like he's the exception rather than the rule. End of story. Huh. Well, that went about as expected. It's insane what happens when people have the sense to just sit down and talk things out. It was a bit more painful than it needed to be, but it looks like everything worked out. Kinda. There's one thing that really irritates me about this story other than Alice's obvious nice girl antics, and that's OP's victim complex. Oh, woe is me! Every single male DM I've ever had turned out to be a sexual deviant. Oh, maybe if I go with a female DM she'll— Oh no, she was also a sexual deviant! I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that I keep the company of almost exclusively sexual deviants, and all 50 million Dungeons and Dragons players must be complete perverts! Oh! Go ahead and call me a victim blamer or whatever you want to call me, but lest we forget that OP's not even the victim in this story. That was Mary. OP is just the one who tried to make the reader pity her as much as she could at the beginning and end of the story. I don't know, man, it just rubs me the wrong way when people paint entire communities with a generalized brush based off of a handful of bad experiences that they've had. Okay, hopping off the soapbox now, you could all come back. I'm glad that everyone was able to escape, and that Alice never turned Mary into her own personal white rabbit. And on that note, we have a fan art submission this week. That's right, how about we take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake? This week's fan art comes from viewer Timothy Gray, who just so happens to be the artist and illustrator for the new webcomic Brothers Gray, which is about a group of brothers who are totally normal Earthlings just like you. Link to the first issue is in the description. Timothy's art depicts a special meeting between an ancient dragon who wastes his time hoarding internet cringe and an alcoholic capybara who wastes his time teaching the internet about freaky animals. Okay, who the hell are you, and why do you keep showing up at the beginning of my videos? Whoa, I thought I quit eating mushrooms back in the 90s. Dragons aren't real and everyone knows it. Okay, that's besides the point. Why do you sound so much like me? I don't know, man. Probably because the guy who made us loves the sound of his own voice. Yeah, probably. Thank you again, Timothy Gray, for submitting your art. If you'd like to see your fan art featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section. Fan art is my favorite part of doing YouTube, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel further, my Patreon and merchandise links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.